They really do be erasing y'all from history. So, it's Black History Month, and what better way for me to celebrate than to talk about some obscure king that existed almost 3,000 years ago, where much of the history has been erased or lost to time. Which means I get to make up a whole bunch of bullshit and present it to you as facts, and no one can correct me because they don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Just kidding. My biggest source for the information comes mostly from Herodotus and Quintus Semiramis. Two white guys talking about black history. Shit. Maybe this video was a bad idea. But I spent too much time researching this topic, so if I'm wrong, it's because they're wrong. I take zero accountability here, okay? So when you think about the Trojan War, you think of Paris and his lover Helen, Achilles and his friend Odysseus, Agamemnon and his brother Menelaus, Prince Hector and his father, Old King Priam. This ancient mythological war, smack dab in the cradle of white Western civilization, ancient Greece. The last thing you're thinking about is the motherland, or more specifically, Ethiopia. Ethiopia is very interesting because it's largely believed to be the birthplace of Homo sapiens, which makes it the motherland. And they are the only African nation that's never been conquered. Or at least that's what everyone says, but then there was that one time in 1936, 3 years before World War II, where Benito Mussolini invaded Ethiopia because people were poor and depressed from the Great Depression, which is why it's called the Great Depression. And he thought the way to cure their depression was to give them a war to fight, a thing which causes depression, so that people wouldn't have depression.
Cause I got depression. Everybody know, nigga, you need to learn your fucking lesson. Nigga, I got depression.
And his favorability would go up. The Italians would launch the Second Italo-Ethiopian War. Yeah, there was a first one in 1896, but the Ethiopians fucked them up in the first one. The second one, however, they would lose, as the Italians committed multiple war crimes during this conflict, like the use of mustard gas launched from airplanes and attacking of Red Cross ambulances and hospitals, and many citizens intentionally murdered. Some historians have even used the G word to describe the invasion. However, during World War II, the 11th African Division of the British Army, which mostly consisted of West African and East African troops, liberated Ethiopia from the Italians. So I guess you can say they were occupied, not conquered, since they freed themselves. I just realized how off topic I just went. I'm not even in the middle of this story yet. And I went from ancient Greece to like World War II, like that. Okay. So in the final year of the Trojan War, Achilles is laying waste to hundreds, potentially thousands of Trojans after he killed Hector, the greatest warrior of Troy. King Priam is losing the war. His last hope is in the arrival of his two allies, the Amazonians and the Ethiopians. The Amazonians arrive first with their leader and daughter of Ares, Queen Penthesilea. She lays waste to many of the Greeks, but then she meets Achilles on the battlefield, and he drives a spear through her throat, almost decapitating her. He then realizes he's bricked up because he sees how beautiful she looks with his big ass fucking spear sticking through her neck, looking like a big old kebab. I guess that's where the Greeks got their love of kebabs from. I solved the mystery. Take that, mystery hunters. They never solved one fucking mystery on their show. Sorry, only 90s babies will understand that. He confesses she would have made a good wife, and if she couldn't cook meals, then at least she could become one. Hey, I didn't come up with this creepy ass shit. Fucking Quintus Semiramis, my dick is as small as did. So now the Trojans are really panicking. The last hope remained in the Ethiopian king, Memnon, son of the dawn. But before we get to that, let's rewind. Memnon was the son of the Titan, Eos, goddess of the dawn, who would cast aside the darkness and rain light upon the world with her brother Helios for 12 hours every morning. Helios rode across the sky with a chariot driven by 4 horses. But when Eos wasn't doing this, she engaged in her favorite pastime, gymnastics. She would take many men back to her place called Oceanus and fuck them. She was doing Netflix and chill 3,000 years before it was a thing. Fucking stone tablet and chill. One of her lovers was the prince of Troy, Tithonus, who I guess is black. Or maybe Eos is black. I don't know. Someone is black to create this guy. Every picture I see of them, they're depicted as white as paper. I don't know how these two created this fucking guy. It's like the reverse of that Cat Williams skit. That is a black baby from the land of Ethiopia. So I don't know, these two white as fuck people have these two black as fuck sons, Memnon and Memnon, the latter being the ruler of Ethiopia. But he's killed by Hercules in the Garden of the Hesperides after both attempt to claim the golden apple, which granted immortality. The same golden apple was the one Hera threw at the wedding of Achilles' parents, which was one of the catalysts to the Trojan War. Hercules grants the kingdom of Ethiopia to Memnon, and he accepts. I guess Memnon hated his brother or something, because he never seeks vengeance against Hercules ever again. Or at all, as far as we know. I mean, it is Hercules, I get that. No one fucks with Hercules, but not even some harsh words? Talk about his washed up, used up mama Hera? Nothing? Okay. One thing I forgot to mention is much of Memnon's story is written in the Ethiopias, but almost all of this tale has been lost to time, with only a few small fragments remaining. I remember watching a YouTuber's video saying he believed the story was lost in the destruction of the Library of Alexandria, which to me is an interesting theory. Now let's go forward, past the Trojan War, the time of Herodotus, who wrote the most about the ancient Ethiopians, like some of their kings and where the kingdom is located. He also had a map of the known world to him, which included the location of the Ethiopians. Herodotus says the lands south of Egypt were controlled by the Ethiopians, and to get there, you would have to travel south of the Nile via boat. Then you disembark and journey along the riverbank for 4 days because the river has many sharp rocks and reefs, which make it impassable for boats. Then the rocks clear out and you can travel via boat again for 12 days until you come to a great city called Meroe, which is said to be the capital of Ethiopia. The Ethiopians of Meroe worshipped Zeus and Dionysus. The Greek gods called the Ethiopians the blameless Ethiopians during the Trojan War, and vacationed there when they wanted to take a break from fucking with the Greeks to fuck with the Ethiopians. The practice of circumcision was said to be popular here and in Egypt, and inspired the Semitic peoples to follow in this tradition. Now, the Egyptians and Ethiopians came into conflict many times. Senusret III, who reigned from 1878 BC to 1839 BC, did many raids in Ethiopia. A blind pharaoh named Enisus ruled Egypt, but then King Sabakos of Ethiopia just walked in and invaded the kingdom, while Enisus was looking for his fucking glasses. Me and him would have the same problem. Sabakos was said to be a good king, but the oracles said his reign would last 50 years, and in the 40th year, he started receiving dreams that he would round up all the priests in Egypt and cut them all in half. He viewed this as a warning of his coming madness, and before he could let this happen, he stepped down from his title. The guy decided he didn't want to see himself live long enough to become the villain. He got that message 3,000 years before we did. Kudos to him. I always knew the ancient humans were more advanced than we gave them credit for. Lastly, the Persians led by Cambyses II invaded Ethiopia. Before he sent his army though, he wanted to scope out the area and gather intel. He also wanted to find the Table of the Sun, which was said to be among the Ethiopians, and allowed them to watch over the entire known world. One of the most important aspects of being a good general is to know thy enemy. He sent spies disguised as merchants, carrying items like red cloaks, gold necklaces and bracelets, incense, and wine and bread. When they reached the Ethiopian king, the spies told Cambyses that the Ethiopians were the tallest and most handsome men they ever saw.
Why are you gay?
They also told him that they chose their king not based on birthright, but based on strength and height. Sorry, short kings. The Ethiopian king saw through the merchants' bullshit and said to them that they came here not to sell him trinkets, but to enslave his people and take his lands. It is not because he values my friendship that the Persian king sends you with gifts, nor do you speak the truth, for you have come to spy on my realm. Nor is that man just, because if he was a just man, he would not have coveted a land other than his own, and he would not have tried to lead people into slavery when they have not injured him. Now give him this bow and this message. The king of the Ethiopians offers this advice to the king of the Persians. When the Persians can draw a bow of this size as easily as I can, bring superior numbers to attack the Macrobian Ethiopians. However, until then, he advises the king of the Persians to thank the gods who do not incite the sons of the Ethiopians to add other land to their own. He then took the red coat from the spies and asked how the dyeing process was done. He then told him how it was done, and he said, "Even your clothes are filled with deceit, you fucking idiots." He asked about the necklace and bracelets. We Ethiopians have stronger chains than these, thinking the jewelry were restraints. He then tried the wine, and finally, this was something that he liked, and admitted in the art of winemaking, the Persians have the Ethiopians beat. Finally, he tried the bread, and thought it was dog water. He then asked how long the Persians lived, and the spies told him 80 years. He responded saying, "No wonder y'all live such short lives, you eat dung." He then told them the Ethiopians could live 120 years and eat a diet of mostly boiled meats and milk. When they wanted to relax, they would go to the spring which had special oils mixed in. Upon submerging yourself in the spring, your body would be fully moisturized, and this would keep you young. This is the blackest king I've ever heard of. He talks mad shit about their drip. He says their chains are small and not as big as his, and their skin is too ashy and they need to go moisturize it in the pool of secret oils. Look, don't get mad at me, I'm not making it racial, I'm just making an observation. If you want to be mad at someone, get mad at Herodotus. He's the one who wrote this shit. Fucking racist asshole. Also, the Table of the Sun was said to be where this pool of special oils was. Sadly, however, the Ethiopians would fight in King Xerxes' war against the Greeks. So I guess they were kind of conquered after all. And finally, we rewind back to Memnon and his arrival at Troy. When he got to the city, it said his massive army shook the foundations of the buildings, and not all of the army could be housed, so some of them had to camp outside the city gates. That's pretty fucked up. Memnon dined with King Priam, who was his uncle. The old king's hope had been rejuvenated upon the arrival of his nephew, and as they ate together, Memnon told him of his journey to the city, and the conflicts he faced on the way. He told Priam that there was an army of Solymi, who he battled with, and defeated right before getting to Troy. The Solymi were an alleged Semitic-speaking people of southwestern Anatolia, which is now modern-day Turkey, which is also where Troy is. In Turkey, not in Anatolia, but same country now. Yeah. See, this alone would be an interesting story for a movie or series which features an original black character or historical figure, but instead, Hollywood would rather be lazy as fuck by putting a black paint job over white characters. Now, I'm not losing any sleep over this, don't get this twisted, this is not like a huge social issue for me, I don't care that much about it, but it is kind of annoying when it's obvious. But, you know, it can be done well, like Miles Morales, Nick Fury, or Catwoman. But I feel like a lot of original black characters' stories are being sidelined in favor of this lazy practice. You could have a whole series about Memnon's war with various nations and tribes, like perhaps even a war with Egypt. Maybe his army had to fight ancient Greek and Egyptian monsters along the way. There's so many creative things that you could do with this. Memnon called it an early night, as he wanted to keep his strength and focus for Achilles and refused to drink further. He also did not care to boast for his battle tomorrow. He was an honorable warrior, and superstitious, as he believed that his boasting could upset his standings with the gods. The gods would be watching this battle closely, though, like it was a UFC fight. Zeus had set up scales, which would tip in favor of either Achilles or Memnon, and he told the other gods not to interfere with the duel between the two. The next morning, the Greek and Trojan armies crashed into each other, and then the Ethiopians with Memnon cut into the Greek lines, killing many notable warriors. Antilochus, son of Nestor on the Greek side, slew Aesop, one of Memnon's best soldiers, and in response, Memnon slew Antilochus by stabbing him in the heart with his spear. Nestor witnessed the killing of his son and tried to fight Memnon, but the son of Dawn refused to fight such an old man and thought it wouldn't have been honorable. He was also sorry for killing Antilochus and said he thought Antilochus was just some young warrior, not the son of the king of Pylos, Nestor. Nestor then pleaded with Achilles to kill Memnon and avenge the death of his son. Achilles was moved by this, and also Antilochus was a friend to Achilles, so I guess there wasn't need for much convincing anyways. The two warriors finally met face to face and immediately started talking shit about each other and their moms. Achilles was like, "My mom is Thetis, goddess of the water, and because she's wet, I make the hose wet." And Memnon was like, "My mom is Eos, the dawn goddess, a titan, which makes her above your mom. So eat a dick, mama's boy." And so, the two mama's boys clashed wearing their armor and weapons forged by the smith god, Hephaestus. Zeus even projected the images of the two warriors, making them look like giants so all could see. The fight was long and grueling, and both warriors were evenly matched. Memnon even managed to prick Achilles with his sword, and he was the only warrior to lay a blow to Achilles. But eventually, the scale began to tip in Achilles' favor, and he stabbed Memnon, the Ethiopian king, through the stomach, ending the great king's life. Upon witnessing the death of her son, Eos was heartbroken, as she had already lost so many of her sons. Some accounts said she pleaded with Zeus to make Memnon immortal. Other accounts say she told Nyx to bring the night sooner so she could steal her son's body away under the cover of darkness. Regardless of how she chose to mourn the death of her son, he was truly dead, and his army capitulated when they realized their king had fallen in battle. When Memnon's body was cremated, the ashes were transformed by Zeus into a new species of bird. These birds would migrate from Ethiopia to Troy once a year. This was Zeus's way of honoring the African hero. I mean, he could have just whisked him away in a puff of smoke, but that would make an interesting story, I guess. So that was Memnon. You probably never heard of him, but you have now. Hopefully one day we can get a movie or TV series on Netflix. Actually, they might fuck it up.